Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hello there, this is Natalie Sopinsky, and I am going to be starting our new show today, debuting Returning Home. This is an Aliyah show. It's going to be for people interested in moving to Israel, and we'll be speaking to people who have already made Aliyah like me, and we're going to be discussing all sorts of issues, from healthcare here, and banking, real estate, what community to live in, how do you find a job, all these things that people are suddenly asking because there is an uptick recently in Aliyah to Israel. The coronavirus started that, and with the recent wave of violence, anti-Semitism in America, it is now very, very popular for people to finally come here. And some of them, it's a dream they've had for years, and some of them, it's a recent discovery that, that's the place that Jews need to be. So I am looking forward to my listeners and to meeting some of you and telling you my own story and advising you on how you can become part of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. So we'll be back shortly after this break. But I also want to tell you that we're going to have a guest today. His name is Zezy Fuld. He's a good friend of mine. We actually met in a joint venture that we're part of, one of these new Aliyah communities. They've been sprouting up different websites and groups of people here to reach out to people in the States, in England, across Europe, who are going to be making Aliyah to Israel. And Zezy is an American, like me, moved to Israel. He moved about a year ago. And we'll be speaking to him and getting his point of view and his Aliyah story, which is very different than mine. That's today's show. But in the future, we will be interviewing people, and not only people who are going to be moving to Israel, but people who are already here. Because, to come here and have all these questions, and then it's nice to see what really works out. And, there are lots of stories, lots of successes, and it's really a beautiful thing to be able to hear it live, true, and not just read about it as a third party. So that's why the radio is so great, and it's very exciting that I get to be part of it and part of all of your lives. So I will be speaking with you in just a few moments after this break, and please stay tuned to Returning Home.
G'day, I'm Jono Vandor.
And I'm Ross Nichols.
Join us on our program, Israel on My Mind, a show that broadcasts all the weekly goodness that flows like milk and honey from the Holy Land straight into your ears with humorous and happy news stories.
New shows are posted every Thursday at 7 p.m. Israel time, highlighting the lighter side and advancing a positive view of Israel here on Israel News Talk Radio.
Welcome to Returning Home. This is Natalie Sopinsky, your host, and this is our debut show. And I'm very excited, and I admit I am a little nervous, so bear with me, please, okay? All you listeners out there. It's very exciting for me to host a radio show, and I'll tell you a little secret. When I was a young girl in the States, my sisters and I would do our own little radio station on a tape recorder in the summers. We'd listen to the radio all summer long. And this is like the 1980s. And we lived on those summer, top 40 songs. And we would do a radio station for fun and tape each other. And I would interview my sister and I would interview my younger sister. And it was pretty funny now that I'm actually doing this as an adult in real life. But it's very exciting. And my sisters are getting a kick out of this, I'm sure. And I hope they're listening. So I am going to start our series by telling you a little bit about me. I am an American. I was raised in Wilmington, Delaware. And actually, let me just jump a second and tell you, I live in Israel now. I'm talking from Israel, and we are in a very strange time everywhere around the world. This corona business, I just have to get this out there because it's everywhere you look. Even though it seems like old news, it's still quite prevalent news. And this corona has hit us all, blindsided the world, and it really has opened eyes. And why is this Aliyah show even here? Why is there a need for an Aliyah show? How did Tamar and I get together? How did she invite me to talk? I'll tell you. Because people now are seeing the hand of God, and Hashem, God, controls the world. And the Jews are scattered, and they need to come home. And here in Israel, many Anglos have gotten together and created groups, different Aliyah groups, to help our brothers and sisters who are still in the diaspora and to bring them home. And I was on one of those groups, and Tamar found me. I gave a talk, a little video, and she found me. And my guest today, Zezy Fuld, who I'll be bringing on the last segment, and I are both part of this group called Partners in Aliyah. And that's just one of a handful of groups out there to help people move, to help them, because it's scary to move. I think it's scary to move anyway, from one apartment to another, from one city to another. But to move across the ocean to another country, to a place that you've only talked about, is probably a little overwhelming. I moved here when I was much younger. I was 20, 21. And I had come on an overseas program. And that's how my story starts. I was raised a conservative girl, and a conservative Jewish girl, and in Delaware, Wilmington, Delaware. And it was a very nice life, and things were good, and life was peaceful, not like today. All right. I didn't really know about anti-Semitism. I went to Hebrew school, but I never really experienced it. Today, when you see things like in Los Angeles and New York, the rioting and the Kristallnacht, basically, the smashing of windows and the chanting out loud, "We hate the Jews." I never witnessed anything like that before. When I was in Israel already for a few years, I remember someone telling me in America, in a college campus, something was going on called Apartheid Week. I was like, what? What is that? And they told me this is like a program on college campuses against Israel. Now, when I went to college in the late 80s, 90s, there's no such thing. I never heard of that. No such talk like that against Israel. So the world is changing. And I was telling you how I grew up in a quiet town, Wilmington, Delaware. I'll just talk about quiet. These smashed windows and these attacks on the stores in Los Angeles just 2 months ago, May 30th, I think was the date. There was no outrage. There was no response. There was no big Jewish noise, fighting, no marches on Washington about that. Like this Black Lives Matter is all over the place. I didn't hear anything. I saw the news. I knew what happens because I'm tuned into Jewish news, but I don't think it made a difference. And those Jews in America, all of you listening today, most of the Jews today are quiet. They're quiet. And I was raised also to be quiet. I was one of 4 children. I'm a middle child, a middle girl. I was not very academic, but I was good at dancing and music. Music was big in our family. And we all played the piano. My father's a great piano player. He plays by ear. We all had lessons, and we all had to take another instrument. And this was our life, music and school. And I went to Hebrew school, like I told you, and we had a Jewish identity. I had a bat mitzvah. We celebrated Passover, 2 Seders. Rosh Hashanah, we went to services. Yom Kippur, we went to services, and we fasted. But, I didn't know anything about Israel. I had never met an Israeli. I didn't know anyone who had been to Israel. That was never a goal or discussed. I went to music camp in the summer. I didn't go to Jewish camp. In school, I went to public school. We all did. And when there'd be a holiday, for instance, on a day, there'd be a girl in my class who would raise her hand and say, "You can't have a test that day. It's a Jewish holiday." That girl was not me. I was embarrassed by that girl because I was raised to be quiet, much like today's Jews. I grew up and I was not so strong academically. I ended up going to the University of Pittsburgh. I got in because they needed an oboe player. I was an oboist. They needed a second seat. They made a recording every year. I auditioned. I got the seat. And my real reason for going there was they offered a program called Semester at Sea. And this was 100 days on a boat with no grades. And that sounded great to me. I was not a very good student, like I said. So I went. I got in for the music, but I really went because I wanted to go on that boat for 100 days. And the beginning of college, I joined a club called Masada. What drew me in was these boys. They were playing the flute at this carnival. They ended up being Israelis. I didn't know. It was a group about Israel. I also didn't know. And they made Israel sound very romantic. They showed movies, palm trees and sand. I liked it. And they convinced me, instead of doing that 100-day boat trip, to go to Israel. So my third year in college, I went to Israel. I went to the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. I was the first person in my family to go to Israel. I didn't know anyone, but it was a college program. I was going to get credit, and I figured it would be fine. And it was. I went there, and I met people from all over the world: Brazil, Mexico, France, Russia, all kinds of people, Americans too. And I studied very hard. I learned Hebrew. My friends were really the foreigners because I didn't come with any friends. And I noticed that the people there and the program from all over the world were loud. They weren't quiet. And the Israelis who were in our dorm with us were different. They were different. They were serious. They were mature and a little older. And I was jealous, and I wanted to be like them. And I saw them and I thought, okay, I'm going to move here. I want to be like that. So I did. I went back. I finished my senior year of college, and I made Aliyah from Pittsburgh. And I moved to Israel by myself, and I went to a kibbutz in the north of the country called Magan Nechayel, and got a job. And they give you a job on the kibbutz. I got a job in the garden, and then they switched me to the factory, and I learned Hebrew. And after a few months, I left, and I made my way to Tel Aviv, and I ended up staying 3 years, getting a job, making friends, and became religious. I became religious there. I went to a lecture. I was searching, and I met another girl, and she was searching. This rabbi gave a great class, and I liked it. I wanted direction, and I decided I'm going to change my life, and I'm going to become observant. I'm going to keep Shabbat. And this class, they taught us how to keep Shabbat. They taught us the Torah was the blueprint for life. And I went to a family in Bnei Barak, and I saw a beautiful Shabbat, just very simple and very peaceful and very orderly and spiritual. And I had been on my own for 3 years. I mean, there was no Shabbat in Tel Aviv. I went to the beach. My whole life was working out. I was an athlete at that time. I was a triathlete. I went to the gym. I had 3 gym memberships. This is what I did. So I changed, and I decided, let me go home and spend Rosh Hashanah with my family and tell my parents I'm becoming religious. So I did. I got a ticket. It was a different life. This was 1996. No cell phones, none of that. Barely email was used here. I worked actually for places, and it was like a notebook factory. It was very exciting. Phones were just starting here, but I had to call my parents and on a regular phone and tell them I was coming home. And I didn't exactly get into an in-depth conversation. I was already 25, so I had been on my own for a while. I wasn't exactly asking their permission. I was kind of like missing family. So that is, I think, where we're going to end this segment shortly. And when we come back, I will tell you how I ended up here in Israel religious. Today, I'm a religious settler. I cover my hair. I am married. I have 5 children, 5 kids. And I live south of Hevron. It's a very different lifestyle than I had in Tel Aviv. And it took me a little bit of time to get here, but that's what Israel is. It's an adventure. And that's how you have to look at it. So we'll be right back after this break.
Hi, everyone. This is Andrea Siminto from Jerusalem, inviting you to drop everything and join me on my show, Pull Up a Chair. We'll visit this week's quirky stories, meet fabulous guests, and discover my Israel. Together, we'll laugh, shout, and explain the topics that make us say, hey, we've got to talk about that. So get comfortable and pull up a chair with me, Andrea Siminto, every Thursday on Israel News Talk Radio.
Hidden treasures in the Hebrew Bible?
Then join me, Rav Yitzhak Michelson,
And me, William Hall,
on the Science of Kabbalah, where we are seeking to narrow the gap between what we understand of our physical and spiritual worlds. So make sure to tune in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Israel time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
And we're back. Welcome back to Returning Home. I'm Natalie Sopinsky, and I was telling my Aliyah story, and I just can't believe that I actually told it slowly and filled up this time, because to me, it's just, my boring life story. So I will continue. We left off where I had become observant, religious, or were interested in becoming religious in Tel Aviv. And I did go home. And I brought a book with me. It was called the 10 Ways to Keep Rosh Hashanah, something like this. And I brought it with me to services and showed my mom. And she didn't really have much to say. She was excited. She was happy I was home. I had been away for 3 years. And I'm the most like her, I think. So that's what happened. I went home and I stayed for 3 weeks with a plan to come back. And I was introduced to the Jewish newspaper editor, a boy, and the Chabad rabbi had found me and contacted the other Chabad rabbi, and pretty much matched us up. And this is my husband to be, and he is tall, still is, 6'2", blonde hair, blue eyes, thin. He's a runner. And we met, and he was also becoming religious. He was from Philadelphia, and we dated. And we were engaged after 10 weeks. And he was also raised a conservative family. And they all thought we were crazy. My parents thought I was nuts. My friends used to say, Natalie, you don't even know him. And I remember telling them, have you seen him? Do you see what he looks like? Because I was very shallow. I cared about looks, and he is, gorgeous. So we were engaged, and we planned a wedding. That was a whole difficult thing, because we were both religious now. We had become religious, and neither of our families were. So that was difficult, but we got through it. And I had told him while we were dating that my things are in Israel. That's where my life is, and that's where it's going to be. So you with me or not? And he agreed. So our plans were to go to Israel. That was our plan. So it took us a while. We actually did come quickly and did a yeshiva program. It wasn't the best thing for us, but we ended up living in Philadelphia for many years, and 6 years, 7 years, and we made Aliyah in 2005. By that time, we had 2 little boys, ages 2 and 3, and it's so hard. It seems so long ago. I got to tell you, I'm a lifeguard here in the pool in Susya. And today I was just there. I'm actually here. I have somebody taking my place. And I watched the mothers and their babies. And I'm so jealous because, I'm older now. My kids are teenagers. And I remember being with them when they were little. And they're so easy. And they're so, they loved me. and they were my best friends. And we would sing the alphabet. I actually did the Dr. Seuss's ABC book, and I did it so often I knew it by heart. And when we flew to Israel to keep the kids calm, I said the ABC book. I remembered it because I knew it, so I knew it by rote. And we didn't watch movies or anything. We did the ABC book. But anyway, that was like many years ago. We moved here in 2005. And we, again, came to kibbutz. I liked it. I thought it would be a good place for a family. And we went to a program called First Home in the Homeland. And we went to a kibbutz called Shluchot in the north of the country, actually northern Jordan Valley. It's near Beit Shan. It's the hottest part of the country. I didn't know that, though. I didn't know. But it was a program where you pay a certain monthly fee, and you get a house, and you get your meals, and your ulpan, and the kids went to Gan. They went to nursery. And that was a year. And at that time, I was a lawyer. During the time I was in the States, I became a lawyer. I actually went to law school at night while I was having children. And my husband had gotten a master's degree in education. So we came with degrees, but no jobs. We didn't come with any jobs. We came with the sense of adventure. We actually told our parents, we're going to go for a year. We'll try it for a year. Now, I knew that I was going to stay forever, but I didn't want to scare them. So we said a year. And after that year, we left and we went to the south of the country. My husband, Jordan, found a job on his own in a small, I don't know what you call it, a municipality, actually south of the Dead Sea called Merkaz Sapir. And after that, we started really looking where to stay, where to live for good, because that place was not religious and we wanted a religious atmosphere. And we had heard, people had told us, and this is before Waze, and it was before the internet was so sophisticated. So people, our neighbors, told us there's a place called Beit Yatir. It's about 2 hours from here. You should check it out. There were some Americans there. They said it's a very sophisticated place. You guys will fit in. So we hopped in the car and went to Beit Yatir. And we were interviewed and we walked around and they showed us 2 houses that were in the mud at the end. And Jordan was like, no, thanks. So we left and we saw a sign that said Susya with an arrow. And I said, let's go check out Susya. It's probably 10 minutes. Wake me up when we get there. Closed my eyes. Did not notice. We went through a checkpoint and just know we had said we would never live over the green line. Okay? That's Judea and Samaria. We said we would never live over the green line. And here we are crossing over a checkpoint and Jordan doesn't even tell me. I'm fast asleep. So we get here, I open my eyes, and what do I see? I see olive trees, red roofs, fresh air, children, mothers sitting on the grass eating ice cream. And I liked it. I liked it immediately. And I didn't realize where we were. We came back for Shabbat, and I saw glittering lights in the distance, and I asked people, what's that? What's that? What's over there? And they told me that's Yatta, not a nice place to visit. And slowly, I realized we were living in Judea, what people still call the West Bank, and we were among, an Arab neighborhood not so far away, and we have soldiers here. And I didn't care. I did not care. I was not scared at all. I loved it, and I still do. Susya is a village. It's a Jewish village. It's almost like day camp. I mean, I'm the lifeguard at the pool. This is my day. Going to the pool, coming home, having lunch. I know everybody, and everybody knows me. You can hitchhike out here. It's normal. This is the life. This is life in a great part of Israel. Judea and Samaria is the greatest part of Israel. I mean, I loved Tel Aviv. I did. I loved it. But this is different. This is like my parents say, it's like living in the 1950s because you can trust people here. Nobody locks their doors. There's no bike lock. There's no such thing as a bike lock. I've never seen one here. It's just very safe and very simple. And my children are strong. They're committed. They're those serious Israelis, the kind I admired when I was at that program at Hebrew University. And that's how my children are. My oldest is 18 today. My youngest is 10. My oldest is going to the Army in March. And he's going to Mechina. It's an Army prep school. He's a lifeguard. He drives. He's very independent. My third son is 14 years old, just came back from the Kinneret. He was there for 3 days with his friends. I don't know how he got there. I don't know how he got back, but he managed, and I didn't worry. My second son is a saxophone player. He learns at a music yeshiva called Kinor David up in Benjamin called a Teret. It's a 3-hour drive. And that's music. So, I had music growing up and I still have it. We moved to Israel, but you don't have to change everything. You can take your life with you and you can even reinvent yourself. I was an attorney. I still am. I'm a intellectual property attorney, okay? Trademark prosecution is what I do. But here also, like I told you, I'm a lifeguard. I also am the director of development for Hatzalah Yehuda v'Shomron, Hatzalah Yosh. It's called Rescuers Without Borders, okay? Hatzalah Lelo Givulot, Rescuers Without Borders, the first response medics. These are this is the Red Cross out here. And I'm in charge of raising money for them. And I've traveled all over Israel and all over America speaking about the good work they do and the help we need. These are the guys who come and get you when you need help. You call 101 and they're the ones who come first. I'm also involved in Partners in Aliyah, a group to help match up new Olim with people who have already been here for some years. I'm also a Zumba instructor. I am also the manager of the secondhand store in Susya. We have a little secondhand store for clothing, and I'm in charge of that. And I am busy. I'm also a mommy. I'm also a wife. I have the 5 kids. I also have I have 4 boys and a girl. I told you about the 3 boys. I also have a little girl. She's 13 and tall and beautiful like her father. And she rides horses. And she is also a swim teacher. And my 10-year-old is just a 10-year-old boy. He's easy. He's a little spoiled. Doesn't even know how to do the dishes yet. But he'll get there. And he's busy every night with his friends. They do tea and cookies on the migrash. They do poike. They do little trips, little tiulim. Here in Israel, you can do anything. Your children grow up fast, but they grow up strong. And even when they're young, they're independent. They go to school on their own when they're like 4. It's a much safer life than the one I knew. I never heard or saw children outside in the dark alone until I came to Israel. Here, it's like the 1950s in the States. I think it's a very, very good way of describing it. And I tell you, I never look back. Never. And I'm by myself. Jordan and I are by ourselves here. But you can build your family, and that's what I tell my kids. We're building your family, and the next generation, I'll have lots of grandchildren, and our tables will be full. So thank you. We'll be back after this break.
Leap of Faith with Penina Taylor.
We live in the age of information, but not inspiration. If you're like me, you're looking to be inspired to reach higher, to connect more, and to grow. Well, if you want to get warm, you need to stand close to the fire. And if you want to catch fire, you need to stand close enough to get hit by the sparks. Join me, Penina Taylor, as we walk with people who have embarked on a spiritual journey towards Torah. We'll uncover what started them on their journey and what truths they discovered along the way. So prepare to be inspired as we take a leap of faith every Sunday at 5 p.m. on Israel News Talk Radio.
So thank you for hanging out and waiting for the return of this third segment of Returning Home. I am back. I'm Natalie Sopinsky, speaking to you from my home in Israel, in Susya. And if you're still with me, that means I was somewhat interesting. A very exciting thing for my first show. But that's enough about me. I am going to stop talking about myself and bring on my partner here. He will be my co-host. Zezy Fuld, a very special person. I recently met him because he's involved with me in our Partners in Aliyah group. One of the hats I wear, you can say. I told you earlier that a couple groups have popped up of Olim, helping other Olim, and Zezy is one of them. We met recently, past couple of weeks. This has been going on, these different groups. And Zezy, why don't you just say hello so people know that you're really here?
You thought people would just think that you're speaking to yourself?
Well, it is a first show and nobody knows me. So, yeah.
I hear. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you for having me on. I'm actually not in Susya or in Israel at all.
That's right. Where are you? Well, tell us where you are. Good.
I'm actually in New York, in Woodmere, New York. I have a day camp here in the area, so I'm here for the summer. But I do live right now in Ramat Beit Shemesh in Eretz Israel.
Now, that is very good. So many people, they worry. They worry, when I come to Israel, how would I make it? How will I get a job? What about Parnassa? How am I gonna do it? Some people do fly back and forth. It is, it happens. It's not so unusual. You are a very good example.
Yeah, I mean, I listen. I have my day camp here, but really, when I moved to Israel, I pretty much thought that all my work would be in America, and I'd live in Israel, but I'd have my work in America, and I'll figure things out. Baruch Hashem, things came around in Israel, and I'm an executive director of a yeshiva there now, and I have my entertainment business that I have now, which we'll talk about. But it's amazing that, you go there with a dream and a hope, and right now I'm here in my day camp, but Baruch Hashem, my parnassa right now is there. Yeah, as you said, there is telecommunications and there's telemedicine, and there's all. I mean, Israel is incredible. I mean, it is the tech hub of the world now, and it's incredible. But I mean, jobs are prevalent. You can get them anywhere you want, dime a dozen. It's pretty interesting. I'm here and I'm trying to put my finger on the beat of what's going on in America and hear people. Hear what they're asking, the questions they're asking. Is Aliyah for me? Can I do it? Can I get a job? And I'm trying to just listen. And people, it's so interesting to hear people, their outlook and what they're seeing in Israel. And it's just an interesting perspective for me.
Okay, that's a very positive thing to say. We'll get back to that. But why don't you at least tell us a little bit about you? I told my story. I've been here for 15 years. I was raised not religious. Israel was kind of... it kind of happened to me by accident, but you were raised very different. You were raised in a very Jewish, aware, Zionistic life, right?
Yeah, I mean, my story goes way back. I mean, my parents got married under a chuppah, under the canopy when they got married, and the thing they got married under was a flag of Israel. They were very Zionistic. They pretty much said right away, we're moving when we get married. But as it happens, more often than not, I keep on hearing the same story. We got married, we were idealistic, we're moving, but we needed jobs and we needed to stay, and there was family, and there was all sorts of things that people needed to stay for. And people do. They end up staying, and then children are born, and then grandchildren are born, and then people just don't want to move there. My family is here. It's too hard to have jobs. So my parents didn't end up moving. When I was about 7 years old, my father passed away. And when I was 9 years old, my mom remarried, and basically, my mom told the guy, listen, I don't really care what you want with my life. I just want to know that we're moving to Israel at some point. It was a dream I always had. I was in Mizrahi at Zaire, but Israel has to be on the table. And Baruch Hashem, a few years later, when I was in 9th grade, we made Aliyah, and we moved there at that point. My Aliyah story doesn't really start there, though. I went to high school there. I went to yeshiva there. But I met my wife. She was a regular American kid, went to Hebrew Academy of Long Beach, went to SK, which is the high school here. And, she went to a modern day school where Israel was taught as something that we yearn for and we strive for. But it's an idealistic thing that we hope to one day accomplish and get to. But and we spoke about it when we got married, that this was going to be where we were going to live, but wasn't always sure, right away, maybe down the line when we're 60, when we're 70, like a lot of people talk about. That's where we're gonna move when we're done everything else we want to do here, and that's what happened. We really I moved back to America. I wanted to be doing some kiruv, and I wanted to start working with kids at risk. So I moved back here. We were married here for about 10 years, 11 years. And one day, basically, it was pretty much, we were leaving the Kotel. We were in Israel for Sukkot. And we were leaving the hotel, and I turned to my wife, and I was in tears. And I said to her, I was like, this can't be it. We can't, this isn't it. Like, we can't leave the country and this not be our home. And like, oh, wow, I'm having tears coming to my eyes now. That's pretty crazy. And that's really what happened. We got back, and my wife was like, okay, but I'm not moving. And, she grew up her entire life in Oceanside. And I said, listen, you know what? I'll do the work. I'll put all the paperwork together. I'll do all the nefesh benefesh stuff. I'll do all the Jewish agency stuff. I'll sell the house. I'll get us jobs. I'll do everything.
Okay, slow down. I just want to follow here because
go ahead.
All I remember hearing from this story is you moved here when you were 14 years old, and then you left to get married. How did you find your wife?
Oh, I didn't know that you have 4 hours right now. I didn't.
I mean. How do you, I don't understand, and I'll be honest with you, and this is maybe like an unpopular view, but I don't understand how Israelis leave. I find it very strange. Like, this is the coolest country. Why would you leave? So you actually made Aliyah. So why would you leave?
Great question. So I made Aliyah when I was 14. I actually remember the newspaper article when my family and I decided to leave. My parents were on the way to the Aliyah office in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. By the way, I didn't know your husband was from Philadelphia. It's a cool little tidbit. Yeah. But we're from Philly, and we went to the Aliyah office, and my mom sees everybody in the Aliyah office, and they're all crowding around the television, and she's like, what happened? They're like, you didn't hear? These planes flew in to the World Trade Center in New York. And my mom was like, all of a sudden, like, taken aback, like, Baruch Hashem, we're finally moving to somewhere a lot safer. And I honestly felt that way. And I was so happy to be moving. What you said before about kids going out in the dark. Yeah, in Philly, when it got dark, I had to be home. In Israel, when I moved to Israel, I was out till all times at night. My dad told me I was never getting a cell phone until we moved to Israel. He's like, okay, I want you to have a cell phone because you're never home. I just want to know where you are. So it was pretty awesome. Living in Israel was an incredible life for a high school kid afterwards. But I started working. I was a madrich in the Moshav Modi'in. I was a counselor for.
All right, so let me just jump in and translate because I don't know if everyone here understands. Madrich is a counselor.
Oh, sorry.
The counselor. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yes, I was a counselor in a kibbutz called Moshav Modi'in, in a Moshav, and I was a counselor also in a group called Nesto. It was for people who made Aliyah and were having trouble with their Aliyah process. And all I realized was I really wanted to work with kids. But I felt that I was closest to kids that were Americans. I still felt that I was American to some extent, and I knew that I could reach those kids best. And that was really the main reason my wife and I had met, and her family wasn't going to be flying back and forth. So I said, listen, my family flies back and forth, so I guess we'll have to live in America for now. To me, it wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it was until for day one that I wasn't in Israel. Day one I wasn't in Israel, I was like, what did I do? I'm a little stuck here in America. Yeah. My entire family lives in Israel. My mom and my stepdad live in Katamon. I'm like extremely close to them. My siblings live in Ramat Eshkol, in Beit Shemesh, in Karmei Tzur, in Karnei Shomron. We have everywhere. They're all over the place. The Fuld family is all over the place, and we're part of Israel. So yeah, it was a weird thing to leave. I did leave. I mean, it sounds like very sappy and all that, but I did leave for my wife, and it is sappy. It sounds sappy because it is. But I did leave the country for those reasons, and we made Aliyah for the right reasons. We came back after 10 years of being away, and my wife tells me every day like how this was the best decision for our children.
Well, that's very good to hear. That's very good to hear, and I hope everyone out there is listening because I'm sure there are people in that area you live. You're from 5 towns in New York. I've heard this place very popular for what New Yorkers move there after living. I'm not sure exactly where it is. Very popular, very Zionistic place, and we need them to come. They need to come.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, I'm hearing from people here. They're thinking. They're like, okay, it's got to be in the plan. And I'm like, okay, so what is the plan? How do we get you there? How do I help you out? And people always ask me, husbands or wives, they always ask me, like, hey, how do you convince my spouse? And I'm like, it's not about convincing. Never with Aliyah is about convincing. Some people just have concerns, and they want to know that their concerns can be answered, and they want to know that they can get a job, that they'll either learn the language or their children will learn the language, that their kids won't be lost, that they won't be lost, that there are people here helping them out. And Partners in Aliyah is doing that. There's so many groups that are there to help them out. And that's what it's about. We're in a day and age where it's amazing. Everyone wants to help everybody out. And they are. You know what?
They are.
And they really are. Somebody said to me the other day, like, I think people who made Aliyah are looking down on people in America. And I was like, no, that's not it. We're not looking down on anybody. We want to help you out. We want to help you out. We're not saying you're in a bad place. We're just saying there's a better place and there's a home that we all know of. We daven 3 times a day about Yerushalayim Ircha, and Yerushalayim is our home. And we daven for it either as a joke. I'm not sure why we're davening if we're not actually doing it. So,
nachon. Well said. Well said. That's great. That's great. That's not even all your story. I know you're a football player and you're some kind of medic, and you also wear multiple hats, and we're going to have to get to that next time because you have talked us out. But this is a very good debut, and I'm so happy we're doing this together, and I hope those of you listening will tune in next week, Thursday, at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to Returning Home. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
If you're hearing this message, everyone else can too. Advertise with Israel News Talk Radio and get your message out to people. We'll build a personalized package for you. Contact advertising at israelnewstalkradio.com.
Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hey, this is Jake in Anchorage, Alaska, and I love listening to all the super interesting interviews and up-to-date information on what's happening in Israel.
Hello, this is Anna King, originally from London, now living in Israel. And what can I say? Israel News Talk Radio is my cup of tea.
My name is Bhaskar. I'm from India, and I love listening because you get to know the truth and wonderful voices from this lovely country.
Mom! Okay, wait a minute. Hi, this is Chava Dax, and I'm calling from the rolling hills of Ma'ale Adumim, just north of Jerusalem. I always listen to Israel News Talk Radio to get all the latest news and commentary and to keep me up to date every day.
This is Sarah Dax from Ma'ale Adumim, and I'm 12. I wish Israel News Talk Radio was boring so my mom wouldn't listen to it all the time. Mom!
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.